It didn't arrive wrapped in drama or blackmail. No envelope stamped confidential. No threat. No demand. Just a single high-resolution digital file encrypted quietly dropped onto a secure server in Westminster late one night. And when the handful of people with clearance finally opened it, the silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was dread. The kind of silence that only happens when an institution realizes something irreversible has just landed on its desk. For 5 years, the world argued about Archie Harrison, Mountbatten, Windsor. The secrecy, the shifting dates, the missing doctors, the refusal to pose on hospital steps, the elastic timelines everyone pretended not to notice. Debate was easy. Proof is different. Proof is a weapon. And according to a palace insider who finally broke ranks, that weapon has now detonated. This wasn't the birth certificate the public saw. Not the type sanitized version released months later, the one that confused everyone by listing Meghan's occupation as Princess of the United Kingdom. This was the original source document, the handwritten medical intake form signed at the moment of delivery. And in the box marked mother, the name was not Meghan Markle. The leak describes a legal maneuver whispered about for years but never confirmed, a high-stakes workaround known in elite legal circles as an adoption overlay. The document allegedly lists the birth mother as Surrogate A, with a redacted surname matching a mysterious figure long discussed behind closed doors. This wasn't rumor anymore. This was paperwork, government paperwork. And that's why panic reportedly erupted in Montecito so fast it was described as kinetic. Because you can spin a podcast, you can cry on Netflix, you cannot gaslight a government record. The timeline alone is explosive. The document lists a birth date nearly 2 weeks earlier than what the world was told. A different location too, not London's Portland Hospital, but a private medical facility in Santa Barbara known for high-security surrogacy deliveries. No royal gynecologist signature, no UK verification, just a quiet American medical event sealed under California law. If authenticated by parliamentary review, the implications are catastrophic. Not just embarrassment, not just scandal, a direct violation of succession law, a lie embedded into constitutional record. According to the insider, this wasn't about destroying Harry. It was about saving the monarchy, cutting the cord before the infection spread. The real document tells a story that shatters the fairy tale. It confirms the birth did not happen in the UK. It confirms a gestational arrangement. It confirms legal parentage under California law. And it exposes the 18-day gap everyone ignored, the laundering window, the period when the child was allegedly transported to the UK under diplomatic cover while the public waited for a birth announcement that had already happened thousands of miles away. The refusal to pose on the hospital steps suddenly makes sense. There were no steps. The doctor's silence makes sense. They couldn't sign what they didn't witness. This wasn't privacy. It was logistics. And then comes the detail that makes the blood run cold. The witness signature. Not a royal aide, not family, but the man long rumored to be the architect behind the scenes. The connector, the fixer, the gatekeeper. Suddenly he isn't a bystander. He's a participant. As the document circulates quietly through aristocratic channels, reactions split between horror and grim vindication. They always suspected something was off, but seeing a Santa Barbara medical header collide with royal protocol is something the monarchy was never designed to survive. Harry, insiders say, has gone unreachable. Because how do you explain to your country that the prince you presented is, in the eyes of the law, a child born in an American clinic to a woman whose name you hid? And then the money trail explodes. Because if the birth certificate is the gun, the payments are the bullet. According to forensic accounting records attached to the leak, the surrogacy fees didn't come from personal funds. They came through a Delaware shell company funded by money labeled in royal accounts as renovation costs. Frogmore Cottage, public money, taxpayer funds. The dates align too perfectly to ignore. Transfers coinciding with conception windows. Final settlement payments days before the public was told Meghan had gone into labor. The ledger doesn't lie. The baby arrived. The money moved. The lie began. But the most devastating revelation isn't financial. It's biological. The genetic origin section isn't blank. It's filled out, typed, cold, clinical. It lists a donor egg. Read that again. If authentic, it means Meghan didn't carry the child, and she didn't contribute the egg. Legally in California, she's the intended parent. Constitutionally in Britain, she's an adopter. And under succession law, adoption carries no blood right. None. This is the kill switch. A surrogate birth alone would be murky. A donor egg makes it lethal. The fraud becomes total. Not just a staged pregnancy, but a manufactured bloodline. Inside the palace, the mood reportedly turned turns apocalyptic. King Charles isn't staring at a difficult daughter-in-law anymore. He's staring at a dynastic coup, an heir procured through contract and presented as Windsor Dina. And Harry? The leaked emails suggest he signed the checks. He authorized the payments. He knew the romance wasn't a fairy tale. It was procurement. Then comes the woman everyone forgot about, the surrogate. Candidate 6, the Enda, the quiet life she was promised. The leak claims her silence clause has expired and that she's now speaking to UK lawyers, not for revenge, for correction. She allegedly says she was told the child would be raised privately in America, not placed in the British line of succession, not used as a pawn in a global PR war. And because NDAs don't protect fraud against the crown, her voice suddenly matters. Meanwhile, frantic attempts are allegedly made to silence her again. Same accounts, same shell companies, same panic, but it's too late. Her medical updates sent during the pregnancy are already in the dossier. Oregon updates. While Meghan was photographed smiling in London, the king stops looking for reconciliation. He looks for containment. The removal instrument isn't loud, it's surgical. Letters patent, a clarification, no names, no accusations, just a definition. Titles reserved for issue born of the body of the legal spouse. Bureaucratic, lethal. In Montecito, rage turns scorched earth. Diaries are threatened. Leaks promised, but the palace activates protocols built for blackmail, super injunctions, archive scrubs, counter-narratives prepared. Then the twist that ends the game. The egg donor has a lawyer. She was promised anonymity. She was told her genetics would help a private couple, not alter a monarchy. She offers testimony in exchange for immunity. And with her arrival, the last illusion collapses. Contracts signed under false pretenses are void. NDAs collapse. Settlements dissolve. Legal motherhood evaporates. Parliament is quietly notified, the amendment drafted, and with a single sentence, the Sussex brand is decapitated without spectacle. Harry breaks. Confronted with documents, money trails, biological truth, he collapses. He's isolated, communications rerouted. He's offered a deal. Save the man. Sacrifice the lie. He accepts. The affidavit is signed. The donor testifies. The document enters the archives. The titles don't need to be stripped. They simply cease to exist. And then, without fanfare, without drama, a bordered notice appears on the palace website. Clinical. Devastating. The styling and position of the children are placed in abeyance pending constitutional clarification. That's it. No accusations. No names. Just erasure. Pages vanish. Biographies disappear. 5 years wiped clean like a fever dream the institution finally woke from. Harry retreats into silence, not a reunion. A rehabilitation. Safe, broken, shelved. Meghan remains in Montecito, surrounded by empty rooms and canceled contracts. The diaries neutralized, the leverage gone, the title hollow. Deep in the royal archives, the document is sealed, waxed, dated, locked for a century. The truth won't be taught yet, but its consequences are already breathing. The king signs the final order. The line of succession is clean, the bloodline restored. And just like that, the Sussex era ends, not with a bang, but with a correction. The correction didn't just ripple outward. It collapsed inward. Within hours of the palace notice going live, phones across London, Los Angeles, and Washington began lighting up, not with outrage, but with panic. Agents, lawyers, brand managers, and quietly terrified executives all asked the same question in different ways. Are the titles really gone? And the answer they were getting back again and again was worse than yes. The answer was they were never valid to begin with inside Montecito. The silence became something heavier. No rebuttal statement, no carefully worded denial, no emotional video. Meghan's usual machinery, rapid response PR, planted think pieces, sympathetic leaks never spun up because there was nothing left to spin. You can't argue perception, you can't argue definitions. And the palace hadn't accused her of anything. They had simply redefined reality. That's what made it lethal. Contracts began to freeze, not loudly, quietly. A streaming executive delayed a call. A publishing lawyer suddenly needed additional review. A foundation audit was postponed. The brand wasn't canceled, it was quarantined. Everyone was waiting to see who would be named next, and no one wanted to be standing too close when it happened. Harry, meanwhile, wasn't speaking to anyone outside a very small, very controlled circle. The safe house wasn't a prison, but it might as well have been. No social media, no press, no contact with old friends. Sources describe him as hollowed out, cycling between rage, grief, and something close to relief, because the lie was finally off his chest, even if the cost was everything he built his life on. The palace lawyers moved faster than the press ever could. Notices went out, internal records were updated, diplomatic partners were briefed, the succession website refreshed without ceremony, and in a detail that didn't escape insiders, the change wasn't framed as punishment. It was framed as administrative clarification. The monarchy didn't accuse, it corrected. That distinction matters. Accusations invite lawsuits, corrections, and conversations. Back in California, Meghan reportedly oscillated between fury and disbelief. She had always assumed exposure would trigger negotiation, that the threat of chaos would force compromise, but the institution didn't negotiate. It absorbed the blow, sealed the breach, and kept moving. That was the miscalculation. She believed reputation mattered more than continuity. She was wrong. The diaries, the nuclear option, were suddenly useless, locked behind injunctions, poisoned by the donor's sworn testimony. Any attempt to release them now wouldn't look like bravery. It would look like retaliation. And retaliation in this context looked dangerously close to extortion. Friends stopped calling. Allies distanced themselves. Even sympathetic voices grew cautious, because defending a misunderstood duchess is one thing. Defending a constitutional fiction is another. And then came the detail that made the outcome permanent. The donor's affidavit wasn't just sealed into the archives. Copies were lodged with multiple authorities across jurisdictions. A legal dead man switch. Even if every file vanished tomorrow, the truth would still exist. Duplicated, notarized, preserved. The clock could not be turned back. The palace, satisfied that the breach was contained, shifted focus. Not to revenge, to future-proofing. Additional language drafted. Procedures tightened. A quiet internal audit ordered to ensure this could never happen again. The monarchy doesn't rage. It adapts. As for Harry, the deal he accepted came with a condition heavier than exile. Silence. No memoirs, no interviews, no his side of the story. In exchange, he keeps his name, his safety, and what's left of his dignity. He is allowed to exist, but not to narrate. It's a brutal mercy. The last image of this saga isn't a courtroom or a confrontation. It's a room deep inside Windsor, lights low, where a leather-bound box is placed onto a shelf among centuries of secrets. Inside it, the Santa Barbara letterhead, the donor classification, the signatures, the proof, sealed not because it's false, but because it's too true to release fully. Outside, life moves on. The monarchy continues. The public debates something else, another scandal, another distraction. But somewhere in California, a title without substance echoes in empty rooms. Somewhere in Scotland, a prince learns how to live without a lie, and somewhere in London, a king looks at a clean line of succession and understands the price he paid to keep it that way. No spectacle, no apology, no redemption arc, just a quiet correction that erased an era. And that, in the end, is how institutions survive scandals that would destroy anyone else, would destroy anyone else, would destroy anyone else, would destroy